During the late medieval and early modern periods in Western Europe, people were persuaded that they were facing a vast, clandestine conspiracy of witches directed by Satan himself. Christendom was in danger, and decisive action was required. Religious and secular authorities were unanimous in this conclusion and joined forces to combat this evil. Placed in context, the witch hunts unfolded amid cascading catastrophes. From the mid-14th century onward, recurrent outbreaks of plague made death a constant presence. Physicians had no answers, and clerical appeals for divine aid offered no solace. Another factor was climate instability due to a prolonged period of cold temperatures called the Little Ice Age that brought crop failures, livestock losses, and debt and economic collapse, intensifying rural desperation. Religious and dynastic wars brought destruction, violence, displacement, and famine, even as the Reformation and Counter-Reformation shattered confessional unity and replaced certainty with competing claims to religious truth. In a society overwhelmed by catastrophe, traditional explanations of suffering as natural or accidental collapsed. When such gaps in understanding emerge, cultures often fill them with supernatural or paranormal explanations. In Europe, misfortune was increasingly attributed to Satan and his supposed human emissaries. The grotesque and fanatical imagination of churchmen and secular authorities, Satan and his host of witches were openly roaming the earth, a sign that the apocalypse was close at hand. The educated elites, jurists, theologians, and philosophers took up the task of finding and eliminating these imagined enemies of God. These men may correctly be labeled demonologists, witch hammerers, or witch doctors. The core doctrines of demonology were codified in the book titled Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, first published in 1487, at a time when the revolutionary technology of printing allowed ideas to spread with unprecedented speed. The book asserted the reality of a vast diabolical conspiracy of witches and provided detailed legal and procedural instructions for the prosecution and destruction of witches. This sanguinary text was written by Heinrich Kramer, an eccentric, obsessive, and deeply misogynistic German Dominican friar, inquisitor, and theologian, with the nominal co-authorship of Jacob Sprenger, another German Dominican friar.
Their project had the blessings of Pope Innocent VIII, who issued the bull Summis Desiderantes Effectibus, desiring with the utmost ardor, in 1484, endorsing the authority of Kramer and Sprenger to eradicate witches. Kramer published the papal bull at the very front of his book. Kramer's text integrated misogyny into demonology, law, and theology, and legitimized the torture and execution of tens of thousands of innocent women and girls across Europe. Thousands of people were arrested. Between 40,000 and 60,000 people were executed for witchcraft, roughly 75 to 80% of whom were women. The Malleus was published at least 30 times between 1487 and 1669 and was widely circulated among judges, theologians, and inquisitors. Its repeated reprinting standardized demonological ideas and judicial practices across much of Europe and greatly amplified the book's influence. Drawing on selective readings of scripture and classical authorities, demonologists reclassified otherwise mostly innocuous forms of folk magic, such as rainmaking, healing charms, love spells, and protective amulets, into a unified and systematic body of diabolical practices linked to Satan. A witch's supernatural powers, demonologists maintained, required a formal pact with Satan. These powers included the ability to fly to witches' sabbaths, mingle with demons, cause magical harm, and shapeshift into animals. Witches were blamed for a wide range of misfortunes: shipwrecks, epidemics, crop failures, storms, and sudden illness or death, and much more. European demonology personified all adversities as the action of witches, the purported minions of Satan, who became the embodiment of evil. Their crimes, witch hammerers claimed, were so monstrous that their extermination was imperative. The witch, demonologists said, are the most vile, abject, and detestable of human beings, creatures of utter ugliness, poverty, and misery.
Yet these despised and pathetic figures were paradoxically portrayed as the devil's chosen lethal ministers, engaged in a secret war to destroy Christendom. Through this contradiction, demonology fashioned the witch as the symbolic negation of society itself, the living embodiment of everything that humanity feared, rejected, and suppressed. The witch thus became the representation of chaos, rebellion, moral collapse, and social dissolution. At the local level, before the imposition of the concept of diabolical witchcraft created and imposed by the elites from above, this image closely mirrors the conception of the witch identified by modern anthropologists in small-scale societies worldwide, where accusations of witchcraft construct figures of social inversion that serve to enforce conformity and preserve normative order. The diabolical witchcraft model erased or absorbed these earlier understandings and imposed a new interpretive framework. The demonological system, however, was inherently vulnerable to corruption and abuse, since rumor, speculation, and hearsay were sufficient to sustain accusations of witchcraft. Such charges frequently functioned as tools for seizing property, settling personal vendettas, and eliminating political rivals. Moreover, at times, serial killers, thieves, and social nonconformists were also caught in this net and prosecuted as witches. But what persuaded some of the leading thinkers of the day, many of them living during the Age of Enlightenment and the Renaissance, that this imaginary threat was real? It was imaginary because no one, anywhere or at any time, has ever been able to do what witches were accused of doing. This point was not lost on critics at that time, such as Reginald Scott, an English writer and politician, who argued that witches were blamed for acts that were naturally impossible and irrational to believe. The disasters attributed to witches, he added, occur without the presence of witches and continue even after witches are burned. Why then, Scott said, should such events be blamed on witchcraft, when they keep happening even after the supposed cause has been removed? Why did the evidence appear indisputable to many? The answer lay in how witchcraft was defined and in the methods devised to combat it. Witchcraft was conceptualized as an exceptional crime. Witches operated in secrecy, their deeds occurring at night or in distant and hidden locations, as witch hunters themselves insisted. On this basis, they argued that extraordinary measures were necessary to confront such wickedness and abomination. In witchcraft trials, torture became the proof of all proofs. Through brutal pain-inflicting mechanisms and techniques, magistrates and inquisitors believed they were carefully and methodically extracting reliable knowledge about witches and their supposed activities. Once legal proceedings began, a striking pattern emerged. Witches were discovered wherever authorities chose to look. The use of standardized leading questions drawn from earlier trials, combined with shared demonological assumptions among inquisitors, produced a striking uniformity in testimony. What seemed to contemporaries as independent confirmation of widespread witchcraft, carefully recorded by diligent inquisitors, was in fact the product of a tightly scripted system that repeatedly generated the same false stories of witches and their alleged crimes. Another striking feature of the witch hunts was the seemingly inexhaustible supply of witches. As one observer put it, "The devil is accounted so good a master that we cannot commit so great a number of his slaves to the flames, but there shall arise from their ashes a sufficient number to supply their place." What then was actually happening? Was there truly a secret army of witches with magical powers numbering in the thousands across Europe, bent on destroying Christendom? In other words, was the conspiracy theory proposed by the demonologists real? Not quite. Did the accused truly worship the devil and meet in secret nocturnal assemblies? Probably not. Or was the church instead persecuting believers of an older pagan tradition, misrepresenting them as satanic conspirators? But it was not so. Witches appeared to be everywhere, because the very procedures used to prosecute witches manufactured evidence and multiplied suspects. Large-scale witch burnings occurred only when suspects were compelled to denounce others. No prisoner was released from agony until others had been named. Those accused were subjected to the same process, producing further denunciations in an expanding chain reaction. In this way, the number of witches could grow exponentially. With no one daring to recant and face further torture and agony, and every confession pointing to new suspects, the cycle of accusers and accused seemed endless. and all were marked for death. The very methods used to uncover the crime ensured its apparent ubiquity, creating the illusion of a universal satanic conspiracy and confirming again and again the reality of the threat the witch hunters had set out to prove. Demonologists created a baseless and grotesque fantasy, one that did not merely mislead the general public, but also convinced its own architects of its reality. Friedrich von Spee, a Jesuit priest who served as confessor to those condemned as witches before execution, said, "Torture fills Germany with witches and unheard of wickedness. And not only Germany, but any nation that employs it. The pain is so extreme," Spee added, "that many will falsely confess whatever the interrogator suggests." "It is astonishing," Spee said, "that learned authors who instruct the world about witchcraft base their entire case on so fraudulent a foundation." Spee added that, "I have often thought that the only reason we are not all witches is that we have not all been tortured." Spee said further, "There is truth in what one inquisitor recently boasted, that if he could lay hands on the Pope, he could even make him confess that he was a witch or wizard." The fact that witches were being created by the very procedures employed to locate and obliterate them totally eluded the perplexed witch hammerers. The demonic creatures conjured up in the torture chambers had acquired a life of their own and confronted the learned doctors and magistrates with a frightening reality. The engineers and promoters of the witch hunts were thus mystified by the very system they had helped devise. As trials and executions multiplied, they appeared to confirm the puzzled and alarmed witch hunters' darkest fears. Satan was winning, and the world was plummeting into wickedness. Some demonologists professed belief, but did so cynically rather than sincerely. But panic and terror drove others to ever more extreme measures, hardening their convictions, doubling down on their efforts, and intensifying the persecutions, ultimately spelling doom for thousands of innocent people. The Jesuit priest and auxiliary bishop Peter Binsfeld of Trier declared that the burnings must continue for as long as the crime persisted. Between 1587 and 1594, this man oversaw one of the most brutal waves of witch trials in Western Germany. "As long as there are witches, enchanters and sorcerers," Binsfeld declared, "the sentence must be pronounced fire for the witches, fire for the enchanters, and fire for the sorcerers." What did all this mean? Among other things, the witch hunts, always highly publicized and theatrical events, functioned as attempts to symbolically restore moral order amid intolerable conditions. Problems generated by complex social, economic and political forces, which people could neither fully explain nor control, were personified and attributed to the imagined magical crimes of Satan's supposed agents. Witches as scapegoats offered easy answers to complex problems and relieved those in charge from having to bear responsibility for intolerable conditions. Killing Satan's pretended agents did not end misfortune, because their crimes were imaginary. The killing itself was the point. This unsettling truth illuminates the witch craze. As part of the theatrics, processions of witch hunters sent to cities, towns and villages were carefully staged spectacles of power, fear and religious authority. They were intended to awe, intimidate and morally overwhelm local populations. The staged slaughter of Satan's baleful and terrifying agents conveyed the needed message that society was not descending into chaos after all, that the majesty of the law reigned supreme, and that the Almighty was indeed in heaven.